The Weaver's Dream. Once upon a time, in a vibrant coastal town nestled between rugged cliffs and a sparkling turquoise sea, there lived a young man named Arjun. The town of Velara was known for its colorful markets, where merchants sold spices, fish, and intricately woven fabrics that shimmered in the sunlight. Arjun was a weaver, skilled in crafting tapestries that told stories of the sea, the stars, and the ancient legends of Velara. His hands moved with precision, threading vibrant colors into patterns that seemed to dance with life. Yet, despite his talent, Arjun harbored a dream far grander than his small loom could hold. He wanted to share his tapestries with the world, to see his creations adorn great halls in distant lands and inspire people he had never met. There was one obstacle that loomed larger than the cliffs surrounding Velara. Arjun spoke only the local dialect, a melodic language understood by the townsfolk, but unknown beyond the region. To make his dream a reality, he needed to learn the common tongue spoken by traders and travelers, the language that connected Velara to the vast world beyond. It was called Solera, a language of flowing vowels and complex grammar, used in markets, courts, and cities across the continent. Arjun knew that mastering Solera was the key to sharing his tapestries and stories with the world, but the thought of learning it filled him with both excitement and dread. Arjun began his journey with enthusiasm. He borrowed a tattered book of Solera phrases from a traveling merchant and spent his evenings by candlelight, tracing unfamiliar words with his calloused fingers. He practiced greetings, memorized verbs, and tried to mimic the cadence of the traders who passed through Velara's market. But the language was unlike anything he had known. The grammar twisted in ways that confused him, sentences seemed to rearrange themselves, and words changed depending on who was speaking or what was being said. His early attempts to speak Solera with merchants were met with polite smiles and puzzled looks. "You say I weave cloth, but it sounds like I eat the moon," one trader teased, laughing kindly. Arjun's cheeks burned with embarrassment, and doubt began to creep into his heart. As weeks turned into months, Arjun's excitement faded into frustration. He felt trapped by the endless rules of Solera, tenses that shifted, pronouns that changed, and vocabulary that seemed to grow faster than he could keep up. Every mistake felt like a step backward, and he began to wonder if his dream was too big for someone like him, a weaver from a small town. One stormy evening, as rain battered the roof of his modest home, Arjun tossed his Solera book aside and stared at his loom. "What's the point?" he muttered. "I'll never speak well enough to share my work. I'm just a weaver, not a scholar." The next morning, still heavy with discouragement, Arjun wandered to the cliffs overlooking the sea. The waves crashed below, their rhythm steady and soothing. He sat on a weathered rock, watching gulls soar against the gray sky, when he heard a familiar voice. "You look like a man carrying the weight of the world," said Myra, an elderly fisherman who was a fixture in Velara. Myra was known for her weathered hands, sharp wit, and stories of her younger days sailing to distant ports. Her boat, the Star's Breath, was a legend in itself, said to have crossed stormy seas and returned with treasures from far-off lands. Arjun admired Myra, not just for her adventures, but for the quiet wisdom she carried, like a shell polished by years of tides. Arjun sighed and shared his struggles. "I've been trying to learn Solera, Myra, but it's impossible. There are too many rules, too many words. Every time I speak, I stumble. I want to take my tapestries to the great cities, but how can I if I can't even talk to the people there? Maybe I'm not meant for this." Myra's eyes, sharp as the sea glass she collected, studied him for a moment. Then she smiled, her face creasing like the folds of a well-worn sail. "Learning something new is like sailing into a storm, Arjun. It's rough, and sometimes you feel lost, but you don't turn back. Let me tell you a story." Arjun leaned forward, eager for one of Myra's tales, which always seemed to carry a lesson beneath their surface. "Long ago," Myra began, "there was a young crab who lived on the shore, right here in Velara. This crab dreamed of crossing the Great Reef to see the coral gardens on the other side, where the water glowed with colors no one could describe. But the reef was treacherous, full of sharp edges and strong currents. The crab was small, with clumsy claws, and every time it tried to cross, the waves pushed it back to shore. It scuttled and stumbled, sometimes cracking its shell on the rocks. The other crabs laughed, saying, 'Stay on the shore where it's safe.' But the crab didn't listen. It kept trying, day after day, learning the currents, finding paths through the rocks. Its claws grew stronger, its movements surer. One day, after many falls, it crossed the reef and reached the coral gardens. The colors were more beautiful than it had ever imagined, and it returned to the shore not just stronger, but wiser. Arjun listened, the sound of the waves blending with Myra's words. She continued, "Learning Solera is like that crab crossing the reef. You'll stumble, you'll fall, but each try makes you stronger. Don't focus on the rocks, focus on the path. Be patient, and don't be afraid to make mistakes. They're proof you're moving forward." Myra's story lingered in Arjun's mind as he walked home. He realized he had been so consumed by his failures, every mispronounced word, every awkward conversation, that he hadn't noticed his progress. He could read simple sentences now, understand snippets of traders, chatter, and even write short notes in Solera. They weren't perfect, but they were steps across the reef. That night, he picked up his Solera book again, not with frustration but with determination. He decided to treat learning as he did weaving, one thread at a time, each one building toward something beautiful. Arjun changed his approach. Instead of striving for perfection, he embraced the process. He started small, practicing phrases he heard in the market and repeating them until they felt natural. He began weaving stories into his tapestries that reflected his Solera lessons, patterns of ships and stars with Solera words embroidered in delicate threads. To make learning fun, he joined a group of young traders who met weekly to practice Solera, laughing over their mistakes and celebrating their successes. He even started keeping a journal, writing short entries in Solera about his day, his dreams, and the patterns he wove. The words were simple at first, but they grew richer with time. One day, Arjun met a trader named Kale, who had sailed from a grand city called Lumora. Kale admired one of Arjun's tapestries, a scene of a ship sailing under a starry sky, and asked about its story. Hesitant but determined, Arjun explained in halting Solera, stumbling over a few words but managing to convey the tale of a sailor guided by the stars. To his surprise, Kale understood and was captivated. "This tapestry belongs in Lumora," Kale said. "The merchants there would pay handsomely for such work. Can you come to the city and bring more?" Arjun's heart raced. Lumora was the kind of place he had dreamed of, a bustling city where traders from every corner of the world gathered. But doubt crept in. His Solera wasn't perfect. What if he couldn't keep up with the fast-talking merchants? Then he remembered Myra's story of the crab. He wasn't crossing the reef to be perfect. He was crossing it to see the coral gardens. "I'll come," Arjun said, his voice steady. Months later, Arjun arrived in Lumora, his cart filled with tapestries that shimmered with stories. His Solera was far from flawless, but it was enough. He spoke with merchants, shared the tales behind his weavings, and listened to their stories in return. Some conversations were smooth, others clumsy, but each one was a thread in the tapestry of his dream. His work captivated the city, and soon his tapestries hung in grand halls, just as he had imagined. One evening, back in Valera, Arjun stood on the cliffs with Myra, watching the sun dip below the horizon. "You were right," he said, smiling. "It wasn't about being perfect. It was about keeping going, one step at a time. I still have so much to learn, but I'm not afraid anymore." Myra chuckled, her eyes reflecting the fading light. "You're like that crab, Arjun. You crossed the reef and now you've seen the gardens. But the sea is vast and there are more reefs to cross. Keep weaving, keep learning, and keep sailing." Arjun nodded, feeling the weight of his dream now light as a sea breeze. His journey was far from over. Each new word he learned, each new tapestry he wove, was a step toward a future he was building himself, one thread, one wave, one story at a time.